I saw it all, every glance, every shiver like a story carved in shadows and salt air. This coastal town was a quiet place, where secrets clung to the fog and whispered through the pines. Sarah was a woman who drew eyes late 30s, with a gaze like a smoldering fire and a body that moved with a quiet, dangerous grace. Her dresses were modest, but clung just right, hinting at curves that could stir trouble under the soft glow of dusk. Her husband David was a truck driver, always on the road, his hands rough from years of gripping the wheel, leaving Sarah to fill the empty hours alone. That's when she crossed paths with Caleb, the drifter who'd washed up in town, 25, all sharp cheekbones, and a hunger in his eyes that burned too bright. I'm just a neighbor watching from my porch, a glass of bourbon warming my hands, seeing life unfold like a play I had no part in. Caleb had been crashing on couches, taking odd jobs when Sarah offered him her guest room. David was gone for a week, hauling freight cross-country, and Sarah's heart was too soft. Or so she said. Caleb moved in his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his grin too easy, too knowing. I saw them that first night sitting on her porch, the air heavy with the scent of sea and pine, a single lantern casting gold across her skin. She wore a thin dress, the kind that caught the breeze, and he leaned close, offering her a cigarette, his fingers brushing hers as the flame flickered. That touch wasn't just a touch, it was a spark, the kind that could set a life ablaze. Sarah knew the weight of her vows, felt David's ring on her finger, saw his jacket hanging by the door. But Caleb's eyes didn't care about promises. They were wild, restless, and they saw her in a way David hadn't in years. They talked late, too late, their voices low, the conversation drifting from small talk to something heavier, something dangerous. Her dress slipped slightly, baring a shoulder, and his gaze followed, bold, unapologetic. I saw her breath catch her lips part, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath her. It started small, innocent enough to fool anyone who wasn't looking close. Caleb fixed a loose board on her porch, his shirt off, muscles taut under the sun. Sarah watched from the doorway, her eyes tracing the lines of his back the way sweat glistened on his skin. She offered him a glass of lemonade, her fingers lingering on the glass, brushing his. I swear the air grew thick, the world holding its breath as their eyes locked. Her laugh was nervous, charged, like she knew she was playing with fire. The lantern light painted her skin, her dress clinging to her thighs, and his hand lingered just a moment too long, pulling her closer without moving an inch. That night I lay awake, their silhouettes burned into my mind. Sarah, with her quiet life, her husband's steady love, was slipping. Caleb was a storm, and she was caught in it, her heart racing toward a mistake she couldn't name. I wondered if she'd pull back, if she'd remember David's rough hands, the life they'd built together. Or if she'd let herself fall, let the fire consume her until there was nothing left. I didn't know how deep it would go, but I felt it coming, dark as the night, heavy as the tide, a secret that would tear everything apart. The town slept, but I could feel the weight of their sin growing heavier with every stolen glance. Part 2. 960 words. The days after Caleb moved in were a slow dance into forbidden territory. Sarah found excuses to linger near him, adjusting curtains, offering coffee. Her dresses a little looser, her smiles sharper, like she was daring fate to notice. Caleb played along, fixing things around the house, his eyes finding her across the room, his movements slow, deliberate. From my porch, I watched it unfold, a story written in stolen glances and unspoken promises, each one pulling her further from the life she'd vowed to keep, the life David thought was his. One afternoon, the sky was heavy clouds rolling in like a warning of what was to come. Sarah was in the kitchen slicing fruit, her dress catching the light outlining every curve. Caleb was there fixing a leaky faucet, his shirt rolled up, forearms flexing with each turn of the wrench. I saw her watching him, her eyes tracing the lines of his shoulders, the way his jeans clung to his hips. When he caught her stare, he grinned, that reckless grin that promised trouble. She blushed, but didn't look away, her fingers pausing on the knife, her breath quickening like she was already lost in him. They started meeting in secret, quick moments when the town was quiet. The guest room became their stage, the creak of the floorboards their only witness. I'd see them through the window, standing too close, his hand brushing her arm, her fingers lingering on his wrist. I could almost hear her thoughts, the war inside her, David's steady love battling Caleb's fire, the way he made her feel alive, like her blood was singing for the first time in years. Her laughter was different now, charged like she was chasing something she'd never catch, something she knew she shouldn't want. One evening it went further. I was out walking, the air thick with the scent of coming rain, the town hushed except for the hum of the sea. They were in the guest room, the curtains half drawn but not enough to hide them. Sarah's dress was unbuttoned at the collar, her hair loose catching the dim light of a lamp. Caleb's hands were on her waist, pulling her close, and her fingers dug into his shoulders like she was holding on for dear life. Her breath came in gasps, her eyes half closed, lost in a haze of desire that drowned out everything else. I froze, my heart pounding, knowing I should turn away but unable to, caught in the raw, desperate heat of their moment. When they parted, Sarah's face was flushed, her lips swollen, her hands trembling as she fixed her dress. She whispered something to Caleb, her voice soft, urgent, and he nodded, his eyes still locked on her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. They slipped away, but the air between them crackled, a promise of more, a vow that would break everything. I went home, my mind racing, wondering how long they could keep this up before it all came crashing down, before the fire consumed them both, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. Part 3, 960 words. The affair grew bolder, hungrier, a beast that fed on stolen moments and forbidden touches. Sarah's lies to David piled up, late phone calls with friends, errands that stretched into the night. Her eyes betrayed her, always drifting to the guest room, to Caleb, to the promise of his touch. He was her addiction, and she was hooked, her body alive with a reckless energy that made her glow even as it tore her apart. From my porch, I watched her unravel, her life with David fading into a shadow. She barely noticed, her heart consumed by a fire she couldn't control. One night the town was still, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and pine. Sarah slipped into the guest room, her silk dress clinging to her curves, a scarf trailing like a whisper of sin. She met Caleb there under a sky lit by flashes of lightning, the storm brewing as fiercely as the one inside her. They didn't speak, not at first. His hands found her hips, pulling her close, and her fingers traced the lines of his chest like she was memorizing him, committing every inch to memory. The rain started soft, then harder, soaking the world outside, mirroring the chaos within. They stayed in the guest room, its walls creaking under the storm's weight, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and desire. I followed, drawn to their story like a moth to a flame, knowing I shouldn't but unable to stop. Through a cracked window I saw them, Sarah pressed against the wall, Caleb's hands sliding up her thighs, his lips finding her neck, her breath hitching with every touch. It was a storm of its own, their bodies a tangle of need and desperation, a dance of forbidden want. Her whispers were soft pleading, his rough urgent, each sound a betrayal, each touch a wound that cut deeper than the last. Sarah's guilt flickered in her eyes, but it was drowned by desire, by the way Caleb's hands knew exactly where to linger his youth, making him fearless, reckless in his hunger. The rain pounded outside, masking their gasps, but I felt the weight of it, the sin wrapping around them like a noose tightening with every stolen moment. When they parted, Sarah's face was flushed. Her lips parted, her eyes haunted by what she'd done, what she couldn't stop doing. She adjusted her dress, but it was too late. The truth was written in the way her body still leaned toward him, hungry for more, desperate for the fire he ignited. I wondered how she'd face David, how she'd sit across from him when he returned, his grease-stained hands offering the same quiet love she was throwing away for a drifter who burned too bright. Caleb didn't care about the consequences, too young, too caught up in the heat of it all. But Sarah knew deep down the cost of her choices, and yet she kept going back, night after night, chasing that rush, that moment when nothing else mattered but the heat of his skin, the way he made her feel alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. It couldn't last. Nothing that burns that bright ever does. Sarah's lies grew careless, her excuses thin as the thread holding her life together. David was due back, and she was slipping her stories, fraying at the edges, her eyes always darting to the guest room. Caleb pushed her further, testing how far she'd go, and she went every time, unable to resist the pull of his touch, the fire in his eyes that made her feel like she was drowning and flying all at once. From my porch, I watched the end coming heavy as the fog that settled over the town. One night it all shattered. The town was asleep, the air thick with mist, the guest room glowing faintly from a lantern inside. Sarah and Caleb were there, their shadows moving in a dance of need, the light casting their sin in sharp relief. I watched from the shadows, my heart heavy with the weight of what I knew was coming. Her dress was on the floor, his shirt unbuttoned, their bodies pressed together in a frenzy of desire, her gasps louder now, her hands clutching him like he was her salvation. But salvation doesn't come from sin, not like that, not in the dark where the truth can't hide. Then David appeared. He'd come home early, his truck parked quietly down the street. I saw him first, his face a mask of pain and rage as he reached the guest room door. The lantern light caught the hurt in his eyes, deep and raw like a wound that would never heal. Sarah froze her breath, catching her hands falling from Caleb's shoulders as the world stopped. Caleb turned defiant, but fear flickered in his eyes. A drifter caught in a game he couldn't win. David didn't speak, didn't need to. He just looked at her, his wife, the woman he'd built a life with, tangled in the arms of a stranger, her betrayal laid bare in the dim light. Sarah tried to speak, but the words choked her, her voice lost in the storm of her guilt. David turned and left the door slamming shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the night. She collapsed, tears mixing with the sweat on her skin, her body shaking with the weight of what she'd done, what she'd lost. Caleb reached for her, but she pushed him away, her eyes wild, haunted by the truth she couldn't escape. It was over, and she knew it. The fire had burned out, leaving only ashes and a broken home, a life shattered by a moment of weakness. This story is real, raw, human, a tale of desire and its devastating cost. Sarah's out there living with the pieces of what she broke, carrying the scars of her choices. Caleb moved on like drifters do, but she'll bear the weight forever. If this hit you hard, smash that like button, drop a comment. Tell me, did she deserve it? Could you resist the fire? Share this with someone who needs a wake-up call, someone teetering on the edge of their own mistake. Subscribe, hit the bell and dive into our next twisted tale. It's darker, wilder, and it'll keep you hooked until the end.